There's two types of printing, really. There's publishing part of it, and then there's contract printing. Contract printing is great. It's a lot of what we do together and separately. In terms of having someone approach us, it really depends, is there a project? Is there a publisher? What would they like to do? Are they asking me to be the publisher? But absolutely, it's really fun to see what people want to make and what they're interested in.
Hey, Brad, it is great to see you too. And we are so excited. You're coming to the Baltimore Fine Art Print Fair in 3 short weeks. I can't believe it. Can you tell us a bit about yourselves and about you both represent separate entities, so each of you will have to tell us about those.
My name is May Shore, and I started Shafer Gallery in 2011 and Shore Publishing in 2014 here in Tuxedo Park, New York. I'm about an hour northwest New York City.
Hi, my name is Brad Ewing. I am the sole person functioning in Marginal Editions currently. Sometimes I work with digital people or have a hand making larger editions, but it's always been me. I started in 2007 in New York and have bounced around from Connecticut to Brooklyn, and now I'm back in Manhattan. Always working out of the Grenfell Press space, which is 29th Street in Midtown.
May, back to you and your shop. So you have 2 things going on. You have a shop, but you also have an attached gallery.
Right. The 2 spaces are adjacent. They work independently from each other, but there's often a nice flow between them in terms of even the programming, but also the physical space because there is a door connecting them. What I show in the gallery tends to be heavy on printmaking or artists that are making prints as well as drawings, photographs, sculpture. So there's a nice relationship between the 2.
Are you the only one? Are you doing the whole thing by yourself?
I am.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the whole thing. So it's a balance. I usually do.
She has an executive art handler
named Brad.
I do, the exhibitions in the gallery, and then while those are up, then I work with artists in the print shop, and then we try to time it up. So, I did a show with Katia Santabenez where we showed woodcuts that we had made here in the studio, but then also other prints that she had published with other publishers, and then her drawings and her paintings. I did a show with Yasu Shibata, who is a Japanese ukiyo-e woodblock printmaker. And we've done a couple of shows together, actually. And Kevin Francis, who also works in that same medium, he did a show in the gallery of his woodcuts and photographs. And we showed his models, too, his source models, which are pretty amusing. Lauren Packard-Dooney, she's a sculptor and a printmaker. She's based in Philly. It tends to lean heavy on the printmaking.
As well it should.
Yes.
But are those, so when you are pulling together your list of things you're bringing to Baltimore, is it necessarily things that you have produced / published, or are you bringing things that are sort of on consignment or however that works?
That's an interesting question. I have always shown works that I've published myself, but I had at one fair, actually at EAB, I did show Kevin Francis's work, and he's a printer as well. So he prints the work. But for Baltimore, I'm just bringing published pieces.
So, and can you just, because there might be a few people who don't quite understand the ins and outs of what does it mean to be the publisher / the printer / whatever, like the roles are, I think, a little murky for people. What do you mean by publishing?
Right. So I'm providing the space for the artist to come into, and then I collaborate with them as the printer, but I'm publishing it, meaning that I'm providing all the resources so the edition can happen.
But and also it is true that I could be a publisher and ask you to execute the thing, and we might co-publish it, but there often is a publisher that is not in the shop in any way.
Absolutely. Brad and I actually have been doing some of that. It's sort of, in the contract end of it. So where a publisher will approach Brad or myself and an artist, and they have an artist that they want to produce, they want to publish, and then we'll work with that artist. But they're actually paying for the edition to be made.
Right. There are a lot of different ways to split up the pie, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, especially when they want when they want multiple. The last couple things that May and I have done together have been multiple techniques, and she can print more large scale wood blocks, for example, and I can do silkscreen. And so we have been lucky to take the prints back and forth between the two shops and get something done for each artist that wants a different look. Or
Yeah, because I'm primarily a relief printer, so my focus is woodcut, lino cut, colograph, pochoir. Those are the techniques that I really like. I really love to work with.
Okay, you're going to have to explain pochoir for folks.
Oh, sure. It's just it's a French word for basically it's stencil where there's a stencil that's cut and you use a brush. Kind of looks like
Ooh,
this.
ooh. Show and tell.
Yeah.
hang on.
Oh,
A
cool.
brush like this. So it's a very blunt, short-edged brush, and you just come down on the stencil like that.
You're sort of pouncing, as it were.
It's a pounce. Yep, exactly. A pounce
Okay.
brush.
And Brad, why in the world are you still in Manhattan if May is out in Tuxedo Park?
Well, it's where the shop is, and it's in a funny way. Marginal came about from it was an extension of my day job. I've been printing, assisting Leslie Miller at Grenfell Press for the last 17 years, and out of her shop. And she's been in her space since '79. And I went to her shop on a field trip from RISD, and I just fell in love with the shop, and we got along like old friends, and she took me under her wing right away. So that would be the priority. Make sure you get that work done first, and then as evening approached, it was time to bring in an artist that I had been corresponding with about working on a print, and Leslie was happy to extend the use of the shop in the evenings or on the weekends. And so it kind of took off from there, actually. It was a nice meeting place for artists to come from Brooklyn, or they may be visiting in like Arno Beck, who's the work that I'm actually showing in Baltimore for the first time. In the US, I'm showing many of the prints that he and I have made together since 2018. He happened to be in New York just for NADA, and I begged my way into meeting him and talking to him about making some works. It's a nice place for when artists are even just passing through New York and we can meet. It's not far from them if they're in Chelsea doing something. Yeah. So I've always worked out of the space part-time for myself and part-time helping print for Grenfell.
If artists are interested in working with either one of you, and you both probably have different answers, how are you, by invitation only, or are you open to cold calls? How do you do that?
It's funny. I have a long list of people who I've put the word out that I'm just dying to work with you, and let's do it. Okay, it'll have to be later in the year. Okay, maybe next year, and things get pushed out in all directions. I have a lot of plans for a lot of artists that I've talked with, but honestly, recently I had some blocks laser cut, and I got talking to the technician, and he, of course, was dying to see one of his blocks printed, and I was like, well, I guess I'm going back to the shop if you want to come over. And it was close enough to Grenfell, and he ended up strangely came over with his block, and we inked it up and printed, talked for about 20 minutes, and he left. It's like sometimes those interactions happen. But a lot of it for me is fairly planned, just hoping that I'll eventually get to it.
There's two types of printing, really. There's like publishing part of it, and then there's contract printing. So contract printing is great. It's a lot of what we do, what I do, and what Brad does together and separately. In terms of having someone approach us, it really depends, is there a project? Is there a publisher? What would they like to do? Are they asking me to be the publisher? But absolutely, it's really fun to see what people want to make and what they're interested in.
Okay. And what's your plan for the booth in Baltimore? What are you excited about bringing?
So I'm really excited about bringing, so in 2018, Katia and James made 2 reduction woodcuts, and they came back into the studio in 2020. We started like January 2020. So this project for 2 more, to make 2 more bigger this time, reduction woodcuts. And this project has been going for about 2 years. The first pair took 8 months, but because of everything, and we're finishing this one in about 2 weeks. So it's really nice to have that come to fruition. So I'll be bringing that. I'm really excited to show those, as well as the first set that we did together. And they're collaborating, they're alternating the cutting on each block. Each one has the single block in their studio, and they carve them, and they don't show it to the other one until they come to the print shop. And then the rule is whoever did the carving on that block, the other one gets to pick the color. And so we have a proofing session here in the studio, and then I edition the works, and then the blocks get sent back to them. And so,
if it's not too fuzzy, you can actually see them over our shoulders.
Yeah, I can see them. Yeah.
These are states.
Yeah.
I mean, these are,
getting there.
They're progressives of, it's not finished, but.
Can you just back up a smidge and tell folks who James and Katya are, in case they don't know?
Sure. So James Sienna is a painter, and I actually met him about 20 years ago when I was printing at Pace. So James came into the Pace Prints workshop 2002, and he made etchings and he made lino cuts, reductive lino cuts. And Katya Santibanez is a painter. They are also married. And the collaboration that they did with me was the first time they've actually collaborated visually.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, they sing, they make music together. So James plays guitar and ukulele, and Katya sings, and they both sing. But this was the first time they actually worked together on one piece. And I had actually met Katya also at Pace. And when I first opened up the print shop in 2014, I'd always wanted to work with her and never had the chance. And so she was the first artist that I invited in to work with. And I was so happy when she said yes. We did a large reductive lino cut. So this technique, the reduction, is such a specific technique. And it's something that they're both really familiar with. They had done it before. So when we talked about them doing a collaboration, it was the perfect medium. It was almost built in that there was this way for them to react, or they would cut based on the other one's move. So it was a nice process.
It's kind of the perfect conceptual circle where the technique informs the meaning, and around in a circle. And it also is perfectly aligned with not only her style, but his style and his mode of working, and her, it's kind of perfect.
Yeah, I think so.
It's almost like an exquisite corpse, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. With a reduction, you don't know what the finished image is going to look like, even if it's just one artist. But then you have two artists. It's like a chess game, but you can only see half the board. Or, we've had all these sort of funny analogies of how to explain what the process is like. And it is such, I think, a loss of control in a way for both of them, because you only have so much control over, you can only carve what you can carve. And it's funny because it's counterintuitive in a way, in the fact that the less you carve, so the less kind of movements you make,
this one. Get ready.
Right.
You actually wind up leaving the image alone, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And the more you carve, you actually reveal what the other one had done prior.
Oh, ow.
It's just like a series of influences more than really dramatic moves.
And they talk about it being a little combative. They can go head to head a little bit. And then when you pick the color, that of course can really change the whole thing. I mean, you can do really dramatic color shifts. Or if you leave the color, if you don't carve anything and the other one picks a very neutral color, you haven't really changed the piece. So there's all these kind of fun built-in channels to have it unfold. And then at the end, we don't really know what we're going to get until it's all over. Then the other pieces that I'm really excited to bring to Baltimore are lino cuts with Amy Bennett. She's a painter, and she makes monotypes in her studio. But this is the first edition that I think she's made. And so we're doing a suite, actually of 3. I'll have 2 ready for Baltimore, of small lino cuts, and they small in size, but very complicated. I mean, they're about 25 colors. They're very
and
involved.
based on models
Um,
like Kevin Francis as well.
yeah, Amy, the prints, the line of cuts are based on paintings, but her work is all based on models,
Genesis.
miniatures. Yeah, she builds these very small miniatures and she paints them. I'm really excited about that project. And Amy was someone I saw her show at Miles McHenry in 2018, and I love the work. And I reached out to her, and I was so happy when she said yes.
Well, that's great. But May, we forgot to ask you where you trained. Did you go? You didn't go to RISD.
I did not go to RISD. No, I started printing in earnest when I went to go work with Ruth Lingen at Pace Editions, Pace Prints. That was in 1999.
But you don't just walk into Pace Prints and say, "Hey, here I am to print." I mean, yeah.
No, I had a friend a friend knew that I was interested in printmaking, and I had worked with a printer. His name is Mark Mahaffey out in Portland, Oregon. And so I'd had a little bit of experience in a studio. He's a lithographer. And then a friend introduced me to Ruth. And so I just went by the studio, and she was working on a project, a paper project, actually, a handmade paper piece. I loved it, and I was really excited. And so Ruth took me in under her wing, and she taught me a lot. She taught me everything. She's a paper maker, a relief printer, and she has studied with Joe Wilfer. Jim Dine was in the studio in those days, and so I got to print with Ruth and Jim and Kathy Keene and Julia DeMario and Bill Hall. That's where I really learned everything I know. I was there for about over a decade, and then I opened up my gallery.
Wow. Jim always says that Julia is his favorite printer ever.
Yeah.
Sorry, May, it's not you.
Yeah, Julia, amazing. I know Julia, Ruth, Kathy. Yeah.
It's funny because I went and toured the shop one day after I had lunch with Jim because he was coming to speak at the museum, and it was my first big interview with a big artist, and I was scared out of my mind. And so I set up this pre-meeting to have lunch with him, and because he's pretty strong, and he took me over to Pace, and I was introduced to Bill, and I think I forget what they were working on, but it was so much fun. You were probably there, actually.
Yeah. What year was it?
That would have been 2006, 7.
I was definitely there. Yeah.
Yeah, we probably met then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jim is amazing. To be able to see Jim in action is just mind blowing. He's so prolific. He's an amazing printmaker.
Yeah.
He's such an inspiration.
I know. I feel like he's put printmaking in through the sausage grinder more than any other artist. Tried every last goddamn thing with every last goddamn shop.
Yeah, he's so inspirational. I mean, yeah, he's just amazing.
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah, it's cool. All right, Brad, what are you bringing? You guys are sharing a booth, so you'll have to split the wall right in half.
Yeah, we're splitting the booth. I'm actually bringing 3/4 of the prints that I've actually made up until right now. I'm just finishing a laser woodblock with the artist Arnaud Beck. I had mentioned before. I met him at NADA and just loved his works. He was showing some of his really wild typewriter landscapes at the time. This is 2018. And I just invited him to come to the shop next time he was going to be in New York, and he actually planned a trip just a couple months later. We just got along really easily, and he has quite a bit of printing in his background. He was a painter when he was in college, and he has continued to innovate. He's a very innovative printmaker, and he refers to himself more as a painter, but every technique he's using informs the other. It has its basis. He's just a very well trained artist in general, but uses a lot of printmaking in his work. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. So I'm including the first couple of prints that we made, and I sort of a sprinkling of a little bit of silkscreen, and we have a couple of the first pieces we made actually had both silkscreen and letterpress. We made sure that the scale would work and we could jump back and forth between things that we could do quickly with silkscreen and then play around with some embossing and debossing on the letterpress. And it's nice because a lot of it hasn't been seen here. He's not super well known in the US, but he had a show at Joshua Leiner Gallery a few years ago when I was working there. was hoping to have a good influence on Josh and said, yeah, I think Arno would be a great addition to one of the summer shows. And so I got to see a lot of his drawings in person, and besides the prints that we were working on too. I'll also have a brand new marker drawing that he's been doing these beautiful editioned marker drawings where he's got this automatic unit set up on an XY on a big table, and these nice thick pieces of watercolor paper and these watercolor markers, and he rigs them up and computer hacks them so that they execute his drawings in many, many layers. They're very beautiful.
They look sort of pixelated, right?
Yeah, they're pixelated. It's a laser cutter in that way. It starts from the 0 point and goes out and draws its little sections, and it comes back, and then he switches out the next pen, and he's starting to do some really beautiful color mixing on the paper. And yeah, so I'm showing a little bit of some of his pixel related things and some of his like some of our earlier pieces that are really fun too. They come out of this early Photoshop, almost kids versions where you could draw with your mouse and make little bright colored images.
The idea of additioning drawings is counterintuitive for all of the print people out there.
Right.
I suppose it's the same as printing when you're having different layers of different things happening.
Yeah, everything is still happening in layers that way. It's the same. We've been picking apart some of his laser block prints that we've made the last few times we worked on those too. Those we've been making during COVID, so I've been working in them on my own. We discuss where the color combinations are going to go when there's blocks that overlap. But it's funny because at least we have the chance to work together on the first few, so I could really see how he's working. And then now there's a lot of trust involved with him sending me the files. I have the blocks cut, and I'm just kind of going for it. Including the newest piece is this really beautiful, strange grayscale abstract work that's not quite 300 DPI laser block cutting, but it's very small and very intricate. And yeah, I'm sort of figuring out the grayscale myself, warm, cool grays. And I'm a couple blocks away, and I'm still a little nervous about it, but it'll work out.
I'm so happy to hear about all the stuff you're bringing because I think the fair is going to be awesome, and I'm so excited you guys are coming. And I don't know, is there anything else you want to tell Baltimore on your way into town?
We can't wait for the crab cakes. Yeah, I know, we're super excited. We can't wait.
It's been a few years. We love being able to split a booth is really nice, and I love watching May work her magic with people and show the works. And some of what we're showing is so different. I love bringing it all together.
That's cool.
It's going to be great.
It is going to be great. All right. We will see you in Baltimore.
Great.